What's up, everybody? Welcome to another great episode of the GOOYOW Now Show. Today, I have Jeff Richards on, and we talk about a very interesting conversation of are you building a lifestyle business versus a growth engine? What did it need to look like? And then some other factors that maybe you just haven't thought about in what you're doing and where you're going in your business. So I think it's a great conversation you're going to get a lot out of. Let's see what Jeff has to say. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another great episode of the GOOYOW Now Show. I'm your host, Bob McIntosh. And today on this episode, we have Jeff Richards, who is a successful entrepreneur who's built a lot of companies and sold them. I won't steal his thunder because we're going to talk some about that. But as always, appreciate you tuning in, listening, watching, wherever you are connecting with this information from. Appreciate having you here. And I'm excited to chat with Jeff. It's not every day that we get to have someone who's built massively successful companies and sold them. And I think it's something that a lot of times people don't think about. Like, what do we actually want to do and why do we want to do it? So we're going to dive into some of those questions. And Jeff, thanks for being here, man. Appreciate having you.
No problem. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Perfect. So for everyone who doesn't know who you are, which I would imagine is the large majority of my audience.
Yeah. It's a very common name,
tell us
actually.
a little bit about who you are, what you do, what your background is so that we have some context.
So I am Jeff Richards. I am the managing partner of CIO Professional Services, which is an IT strategy consulting firm. And that and $4 will get you a cup of coffee these days. So my background is I came out of school with a management science degree, got into running factories, and was gauging my career growth by how big a factory and how big a staff I was managing. I found that I was more interested in implementing systems to run those factories than I was in turning the crank on the factory and making the monthly numbers. So then I moved into the software business. And after my second software company I was with, I realized I'm product constrained. I got all the implementation projects I want, but I'm product constrained. So I then went to, I was in Los Angeles at the time, and I was big in the aerospace and defense world. I had a top secret clearance and all that sort of stuff. And the preeminent consulting firm in those days was Arthur Young, which then became Ernst & Young, and then ultimately became Capgemini Ernst & Young. But I spent 15 years in there as a line partner and staff partner. My last big staff job was I ran the manufacturing, high tech, and automotive sectors for all of Europe, Middle East, and Africa. I had 5,000 fee earners that we could call into battle at any given time. So,
and in that world, I imagine sometimes it is a battle.
Well, it's always the noble opposition you're up against, right? Right. But anyway, the genesis was when Ernst & Young sold his consulting firm to Capgemini. I was part of that. It was a $4 billion business sold for $11 billion in stocks, which looked great at the time. But anyway, long story short, it was a great match on paper, and a year or two into that, I left with two other EY partners and a senior manager to open up a small consulting firm you would have never heard of that no longer exists. We ramped it up to about $3.5 million and sold it for an equivalent amount. And one guy retired, one guy went up to Bearing Point, and I went, what the heck did we sell that for? And so after a little time, I gathered together a few folks, and we all wrote little earnest money checks and opened this company, CIO Professional Services, 12 years ago. Now, the interesting thing in the consulting business is what you're selling when you sell that business. You talked about that earlier. Unless you're Gartner or somebody has some great intellectual property rights, all you're selling is your backlog under contract that you haven't burned down yet, right? So you're worth somewhere between 0.8 and 1.2 of current contracts that haven't been fulfilled, because unless you've got some brand or some real stickiness at a big client, there's not much. You're not selling anything else, because the assets are the people, and they go home at night, and then they vote with their feet. So anyway, long story short is we did well on that one. I've been approached a couple times now to sell this place, and we're really not interested. So, and the discussion you and I had at the outset of this is something I want to kind of put on the table for the get out of your own way people, is that when you're thinking about going out on your own, if you have a nice W-2 position, but you're kind of fed up with it, you're thinking about making the move, you have to ask yourself a real serious question are you just looking to make money? I mean, is this a lifestyle business? You want to be able to support your mortgage or your kids going to school or whatever this, or do you want to build a business that is actually gonna, withstand your departure or actually be a tangible asset that can be sold? Because both of them are noble pursuits, but you need to understand what your objectives are at the outset, because your behavior patterns will be different based on, I'm trying to grow something, I'm trying to build something, or I'm trying to get to a comfortable level of income that is sustainable, that isn't going to kill me.
And so let me ask you this, in that realm of understanding, hey, what kind of business am I trying to build? I would imagine for most folks, they're just trying to figure out the money portion first. And so it might seem like it's a lifestyle business. Do you find that, you need to be going into it from the outset with, this is, I want A or B to be my ultimate outcome? Or is it possible to change along the way and still have it be successful?
Well, you can always pivot one way or the other, but I think you need to understand it at the outset, because if it's I want to build a business, and again, if you need, tangible physical assets or locations or whatever the case may be, you may have to take on debt, right? So most people are going to go and kind of go into the lifestyle business aren't that prone. And again, I don't want to make that a negative connotation of a lifestyle business. It's perfectly legitimate, but you got to be able to figure out, well, do I need to take a bank loan against this? Am I going to max my credit cards out to get there? I'm going to get 6 credit cards and max all of them out to try to get this going. What am I bootstrapping here? And what is the intent that it's, is there an exit strategy, or is it a revenue, is it a cash generator? What, you need to, because your behaviors will be different. It doesn't mean that any strategy you started with has concrete poured around it, and it's ossified with rebar in it. You could still always change your mind and pivot, but again, you need to think about what your balance sheet's going to look like. I mean, so when I was in school, I eschewed accounting, being counters, blah blah blah. You can't run a business without understanding basic accounting. Okay, so if you want to get out there and start a business, make sure you understand basic accounting and debt management and those sorts of things, as well as project management, because it's basically a big project. So you need to have a real good understanding of project management, and those two things are applicable to anything you want to do.
100% agree. Yeah, I know it's been interesting. I have a basic understanding of accounting, but it's not my forte, and it's not something I love doing. But you're right; it's critical to make sure you at the very least understand, so you can know where you're going.
Or let alone, if you actually do accrue some significant money, how do you know somebody's not helping themselves to it, right?
Right.
If you got a multi-million-dollar business and somebody's taking care of the coffers for you, you're not going to notice the rounding errors disappearing.
100%. And I think that's important. So let me ask you this, and the decisions that you make and the things that you're thinking about, what have been some of the struggles? So obviously, when you built your company, like you said, you sold it for $3.5 million. So sizable business, not huge by any means, but for many people who might be just getting started or on that journey, they're going, man, that could be nice to have that. Was your intent to always build something to sell, or was your intent to have that lifestyle and it just ended up being something you sold?
We really, the first time we really didn't have a proper business plan. We just knew we were kind of fed up with where we were and what we were doing, and we knew how to do what we did very well. So, we just start out, and lo and behold, it's actually people are buying it, and we're making some real money. And one of the fellows was older and was thinking about an exit. So, we're like, okay, well, the barrier to entry to my business is about as high as the curb, right? So. It's easy to get in and out of it. It's also a boom and bust business if you're not careful. For those of you that are anywhere from, personal coaching to personal trainers to other sorts of service-oriented businesses, it's a boom and bust cycle frequently, and particularly under the last 9 months of what we're dealing with. I really thought, so. Dialing off, tangent alert. We're going off on a tangent here. So my business does not have a physical. If you Google our address, we're 555 Bryan Street, California, but that's a mailbox about this big with a keyhole in it in a UPS store, right?
Same here.
You know, I always was of the mindset that you don't make any money in your own offices, you make your money in the clients' offices. And now we haven't been in a client's office in 9-10 months. And I thought, holy mackerel, how's this going to work? It's worked just fine. Now, the decision-making process has gotten about twice as long as it used to be. And people are jealously guarding their cash piles, which they should, because they're not sure if there's more coming. But we're still selling, delivering, you know, closing out engagements at places we've never been, because it is people we know. So we can come back from that tangent now. What other questions might you have?
Well, okay, so let's dive into this. You know, you and a couple of buddies decide, hey, we're fed up. We're gonna go start our own thing. You know, what was the mindset that you had to adopt, or, you know, what advice do you give to someone who might be in the same position, like, to build up to $3.5 million? Because, like I said, I think a good chunk of my audience right now that is watching and listening probably hasn't reached that pinnacle of 3 million. Maybe for a lot of them, maybe not even $1 million a year yet. And so they're looking at going, man, like that could be a great goal to achieve. And so what's the mindset you've had to adopt to get there?
Well, for starters, you got to have a little bit of a war chest to get started into this, and it's because all of you, no matter what business you're in, it's going to be lean to get started. Then you're going to get a couple of clients, and it's going to be great, but then they're going to dry up. So you're going to go through this roller coaster of boom and bust for a while, and particularly in the consulting business, because it's all project based. There isn't really any knock-on revenues. There's no annuities in my business. So you make a whole lot of money, and you come out the backside and you burn it all down while you're trying to find the next one, when you're a sole practitioner. So we gathered ourselves together. You know, there's 17 of us at the moment. And basically it was to dampen the oscillations that somebody was still always out there hunting while other people are delivering and billing hours. Right. But you know, I refer to my wise old daddy on a regular basis. One of the things he taught me was you can't go broke sharing profits, right? You know, investments are one thing, but if there's money available, share it out with the team, motivate your people is the biggest thing. And if you're just by yourself, you know, who's your supplier, who's the people you can cut a break to, because at the end of the day, all buying decisions are made on personal pain points, and all buying decisions are made on personal relationships. It doesn't matter that the VP of IT at major tech company down the street from me has, the company has an issue. That person has KPIs that are going to drive their bonus. And if you know what those are and you work those issues, you'll be meeting the company objectives because you're going to be meeting that individual's objectives. So again, another long roundabout tangent alert was just that if you've got, everybody else eats first. The owner, the entrepreneur eats last, right? You got to take, because all your business, no matter what business you're in, is based on relationship management. And for those people that are newer in the business, LinkedIn is Facebook for old people, but manage your networks religiously, fervently, feverishly and shamelessly network with people, because everybody is somebody's somebody.
Perfect. And now when you say manage your network, what does that look like for you?
So I figure I've got about 2,500 LinkedIn connections. Most of them I know who they are. I mean, again, I ran Asia Pacific for a few years for EY's consulting. I ran a lot of Europe, Middle East, and Africa. I ran a lot of the big tech sector clients. So I've got a fairly good global network. Out of that 2,300, 2,400 LinkedIn connections, I imagine 700 of them or so would return the call within 24 hours. And there's another 700. I haven't a clue who they are. and so then it's a question of the people in the middle. But again, always look to make somebody else money before you ask them to make you money, right? People will be happy to help you do things. So this is one of my, I tell this to all the new people that join us, because most of our folks are former chief information officers, chief security officers, chief technology officers that have come out of industry that don't really, don't really have a consulting bent, but they've got so much IP in their heads, they're of value, right?
Right.
But one of the things we teach them when they get here is this is the elevator pitch. This is what we do. This is how we do some of these things, and work your way through your network with a request. Would you listen to my pitch and tell me what's wrong with it? So if there's a new entrepreneur who's got, the better mousetrap or whatever else we want to talk about, everybody, will take a call to hear your pitch, to help you vet that, critique it, what's working, what's not working, what's stupid, what's excellent, But if you call them and say, hey, let me tell you, I'm selling new mousetraps. Would you like to, how about never? Is never good for you? And everybody will take a call to help you. So as you work your way through that, about a quarter of the time, it's actually going to stick. They're actually going to want some of what you're talking about. But at the end of it, you need to ask them, who in your, Bob McIntosh's network, do you know that should hear this pitch, that it might actually be interested? And so I'm now prospecting my network, Bob, for his network, who I don't have, for leads. You'd be amazed how much work comes out that way. Because again, I'm going to, Bob says, call Bill. I call Bill, and Bob sent me, and Bill calls Bob, says, did you send Jeff? And he says, yeah, actually I did. You probably should talk to him. Okay, great. That's how it works out there. For those that are younger or getting started in this business, that's really how it works. There is a who you know, not what you know aspect of this.
100%. I remember the first time I ever learned the lesson of it's who you know, not what you know or what you've done was I was in high school, and there was this program where you got to go work with management of this bigger company in the area part of the week, and it was man, this would look great on the resume for colleges and things like that. And even though I was probably more well qualified than the majority of the folks that got in, every single person who got into that program had a parent that worked at the company. And I was like, oh, well, that's interesting.
There's a life lesson early on.
Right. And it's just man, that, but you're right. And I love that. So asking when you're prospecting, because maybe they're not interested right now, but everyone loves to help. Or not, I shouldn't say everyone, but a lot of folks love to help out. They're like, oh man, yeah, this would be good. But I don't think anybody ever asked that question of who do I need to know from your network?
Yeah, it's the last question you should ask when you're giving somebody the demo pitch, because you'll get to rehearse, you'll get to refine the discussion, and the people who know you will go, hey, look, this isn't you. This is this isn't the you I know. So what are you doing here, right? So any criticism is valuable, whether it's harsh or patting you on the back. It's something to take in.
And so when you ask these people to, for a referral of who else needs to hear this, do you usually get a warm introduction, hey, would you introduce me? Or do they just give you the information and then you reach out? Or what have you found works best?
What I found works best is make it as easy as possible on the person that you're talking to. So it's hey, Bob, can you give me Bill's contact info? You got his number and his email, or his address, or whatever the case may be, and you take it. So we're pretty well connected bunch, and again, we're big on shamelessly networking and helping other people out, because we're big believers in karma. Our business is a long-term relationship play. We're doing favors for people who may never become clients or won't become clients for years, and people that haven't paid us a dime in years are still getting favors because they're going to end up somewhere. But long story short was, the chief information officer position is pretty dynamic. Most people last 3 or 4 years before they're either moving on, because most of them report to CFOs. There's a new CFO, they bring in their person, or whatever the case may be. I am constantly networking people in my field to recruiters, and recruiters like to come to us because we know a lot of people. And then I'm also, one of my people who, about a third of our folks at any given time are looking for a W-2 position anyway. We like to help them. So one of my folks who is on our roster actually doing consulting work for us right now would rather have a W-2 position than be in the consulting business. And one of our prospects decided not to go forward. And I said, but this person is looking for a job. Here's his CV. Here's his contact details. No obligation. talk to him, because now that we know you, we think he's a good fit. You know,
Right.
whether he goes and gets the job or not, it's another story. But I mean, you know, there's nothing in it for me other than goodwill, or the company other than goodwill. But you know, that stuff will pay in the long term. That you know, I do believe in karma, or whatever you want to call it. What goes around comes around.
100%, 100%. And look, like you do them that favor, and it might be years before it comes back. It might never come back, but I think either way, you know, you've done the right thing. And I think that's more important sometimes, is just knowing, hey, this has been done the right way. So
You sleep better.
Yeah.
You sleep better. Yeah.
Perfect. So, you know, when you were growing this company and you're building it out, and you're saying, okay, look, we're gonna get there. Did you have the intention of selling it to start with? Like, was that something that you always wanted to do, or even with your current company now that you're doing? And if so, is that something that people need to be thinking about as they're building? Or, you know, does it change the direction and decisions you make if you're trying to build something to sell versus, you know, keep or pass to a family member, or whatever it might be your goal is?
Well, yes and no. And the real no is that you need to build something that's viable and has, you know, sustainability is the overused word these days. Something that's viable and will continue. My objective with this current iteration was that it would continue, you know, without me. I can, you know, I've got a couple heir apparents, and you know, I've still got 2 kids in college, so I'm not retiring anytime soon. But 5 years from now, I'd like to be out of this business and have this business just go on, you know, continue on without me. So and maybe there's an ego thing there, but you know, as my wise old daddy once said, is they don't, you know, the company isn't your family. They're going to forget you the minute you're gone. So you know, don't sacrifice too much of the family time. But whether you build it to sell it or build it to sustain it, it's got to be a viable business, and it's got to make sense. Because if it doesn't, it's not an asset to be sold. And if it doesn't, then the minute you quit, you know, pumping the bilge, it's going to sink.
Makes sense. And so what did, you know, when you were building this company and you're saying, okay, look, we're going to leave, we're going to go do this thing, you know, was there, you know, fear, any hesitation? Was it just like, I know I'm going to do this and we're going to be successful? Like, what was that initial journey for you from leaving when you were fed up to getting this thing going?
Yeah, there were some lean times. I mean, it was, you know, luckily I had a little pile of money already, but you know, it was burning down, and you know, a couple years into this, you know, there's been, you know, clients that we had our biggest client in 2014 entered bankruptcy proceedings. Actually, they didn't. Actually, they filed a Chapter 11, but no, it might have been a Chapter 7. It was a reorg. Anyway, long story short is suddenly they're offering us 10 cents on the dollar on, you know, $500,000 of receivables, and I'm like, no, not even no, but hell no. And we had to fight it out with them for 4 or 5 months, and I finally got into 87.5%, and talked to the team, because we're a you know, an open book business. So everybody in our company, you know, they're getting paid based on what the client. I mean, they're not getting payroll per se. They're getting a cut of the project revenues, right? So, and I'm like, okay, guys, if we have to settle for this, you know, are you okay with settling for 87.5% instead of pursuing the 100? And by the way, the $6,000 worth of legal fees are coming off the top of this, and we're all going to pay that too, right? And they're like, yeah, this is fine. So yeah, there's going to be scary times. You know, when you're working without a net, you know, it's always going to be scary. But you know, it's honestly, I think most people are this way. You're, as a type A, you're better off at 120% loaded than you are at 80% loaded. So it's more exciting to get up and play when all the chips are on the table all the time. Mm-hmm. Right? You got to be at the top of your game on a regular basis. You know, you can have an off day now and then, but if you misnegotiate a deal because you weren't paying attention, then that could have long-term ramifications.
Totally get it. So I'm curious, you mentioned something that, your business operates on an open book business standpoint. So does everybody know what's going on, like even from like a financial standpoint? Because that's very
Oh yeah.
interesting,
Well, yeah. So, and then again, so this is a professional services business. So it's
Right.
not like, I don't really have a cost of goods sold. You know what I
Okay.
mean?
Okay.
So when we're bidding a project, the team that is on that project sees, and we've got a spreadsheet that everybody shares of, okay, this is the hours, this is the deliverable, this is what we got to get done, these are the hours you're going to get, these are the hours he's going to get, and at the end of the day, that's how much money they're going to get, that's how much money you're going to get, that's how much money I'm going to get, and are you up for that? And they yes or no, and if no, then we'll put somebody else in. I mean, but we'll never make somebody take an assignment, but they all have the option. But everybody in here knows what everybody makes. It's just because, again, all of my people are at least 25-year veterans. I mean,
Right.
it would be silly for me to chisel, somebody for another $15 an hour in my pocket or pay it to somebody else as a premium. It's like, no, it's A, it ain't fair, and B, it's just, why waste your money, your effort, and the limited brain cells you have to apply to these things to trivial items like that? You got to get the big thing on the you got to drag in the woolly mammoth before you start skinning and eating it, right? So so that's and everybody's got to be motivated. So like I said,
Do you find that increases motivation? Does that like help people feel more cohesive as a team?
well, it does, and it also I mean, again, since a lot of these folks aren't professional consultants, it's unusual for them to see, the cash flow and the and how much profitability the company makes and what we reinvested in, and so it's just there's a greater degree of trust when it's 100% transparent.
Yeah, I would imagine so. That's interesting. I've never seen it that way. And that, again, I don't work in a lot of
most
services.
most people
I
don't
did
do
back in the
that.
day, but
Yeah, and we pay our people better. The company takes a smaller bite, and we pay big in sales commission because nothing happens till somebody sells something. So, as an entrepreneur, your best salesperson should be the highest paid person in the company, not the CEO. Nothing. You got to move this product, whatever it is, or service, and until you've got people buying this, you got nothing, right? And so you hear a lot of, salespeople are coin operated, or it's kind of denigrating that sales is an unworthy position. No, nothing happens till somebody sells something.
I fully agree. So when in your company structure, in terms of, and I mean, that structure is not the right word for it, but in terms of building a cohesive team, is there been anything you found that you've done differently or unique in helping that? Because and the reason that I asked that question is you said a lot of people in your team are 25-year veterans, and sometimes when you find a company of that nature with people coming in that way, there's ego that comes along with that, and that ego can actually end up derailing a business. So I'm curious what you've done to either handle that, or is it just people you've chosen and that's not been an issue?
Well, I mean, we could be a whole lot bigger if we weren't so anal about QA. And so when somebody's introing somebody as the potential, associate for us, the first question is this person going to carry their end of the log? If you guys are up against the deadline, and is this person going to have you eating conference room pizza at 10 p.m. on a Friday night because you guys are running late because they didn't get it done? Or is this person going to bring it in early? You put it on them from the standpoint of, is this the person you want to be in the foxhole with in heavy combat? And if you want them on your flank, then that's fine, and then that's good enough for me. But all of our crew have incredible resumes and histories, and so I honestly, we've never really had an ego problem because everybody's heavy hitters and everybody knows everybody's heavy hitters. So you wouldn't be riding this ride if you weren't legitimate. So it's kind of so there really hasn't been much of an issue.
That's good. That's good. And I was wondering about that, just, in my own experience of working in companies, and I used to work for a professional services firm back and before I started my own journey. I just kind of went a different direction, but we did a lot of ethical hacking and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I found, at least in my experience in the professional services world, sometimes there is a lot of ego that comes in. So,
Oh yeah.
And that can be a difficult thing to handle, especially starting a company of bringing those kinds of folks in.
Well, yes, there is, particularly, so again, I was an E&Y consulting partner for years, Accenture, Deloitte, all the other competitors. The partners are powerful princes in their little fiefdoms. And yes, there were huge egos in there. And there was, an internal competition that was unhealthy. And some organizations, not EY, had a constructive confrontation sort of mode of operation, which is like, oh, that means it's okay to be a bozo,
Right.
but life's too short to work with those people. Okay, it is a fleeting instant, so work with people don't work with people that are just like you. When we founded this organization, there was 6 of us originally that wrote the earnest money checks. One, 2 retired, 1 went to the competition, 1 went into industry, and 1 we fired for malfeasance. But the last 3, myself and the other 2, were an excellent blend, because I am the risk taker. The other guy was the most risk averse person, and the third person was technically our CFO, and so he was the moderating force between me wanting to go do something crazy and the other guy going, I'm not going outside, the third guy kind of, kept us. So do not surround yourself with people just like you. You need a counterbalance. The Abraham Lincoln cabinet, cabinet of rivals, is a good example of surround yourself with people who are different or think differently, because you don't want to be in an echo chamber. You need people to call you out once in a while, like, that ain't gonna work, or that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. It's like, oh really? Yeah, explain that. Oh, I guess you're making sense. I guess I did forget that part. So yeah, make sure you got some critical advice besides your wife or husband.
Makes sense. And so how have you structured getting that feedback, from someone, and maybe even more importantly, how do you receive said feedback from someone who's got such completely different values and ideals?
Well, so again, relative to the bigger business, it's what is, when you're small, you have to brand yourself as something. So we're business IT alignment, interim and fractional executives, cybersecurity, and project rescue, right? Across the several hundred years of experience we've got in the team, there isn't anything we couldn't do, but we could do anything isn't plausible as a branding strategy when you're 17, 20 people, right? So, figuring out what your offerings are, there's that aspect, because you're going to have to focus. You can't do everything. You got to focus on something. So having other people look at, what is the offer? What are we offering? Who else does it? Why are we better? How do we make money? All those basic, marketing requirements documents sort of thing, business plan sorts of things, other points of view, and commenting on those things is useful to get that input when they're like, I don't think you're not solving the real problem. The real problem is X. And you're like, oh, I hadn't thought about it that way, but you're right. So getting that input, and then now to the operational side of it, we are a project-based business, and a lot of our work is what we call same as except. I mean, we've done something like this before, but not quite like this. But what we used here could probably work for some of it, and then we got to make the rest of it up. A lot of people can bring different things to the approach, because in our business, being able to, the end of the day, the estimating heuristic is how many hours times the billable hour rate. And how much, that's what we're going to charge for this. And sometimes the number comes up too high. It's like, okay, what's the better way to do that sort of thing? So, getting people, so we're not just doing the same thing over and over again. We have to refine your approaches and refine your product constantly. Right? Kind of like what we talked about earlier when we were talking about, are you going to have a lifestyle business, or are you going to build a business that's a growth engine? You can't get to some level and decide, oh, I'm good here, I'm going to stay here. It's not going to work that way. You're either going to shrink, or you're going to increase, or you're going to pivot to do something else, but you can't get to some place and stay there.
Interesting. Okay. So when you're talking, I actually want to dive into that a little bit more. So you're either growing, or you're shrinking, or you're pivoting. At a certain point, why can't someone just say, hey, like this we're good here? I mean, obviously in a professional services, like you said, there's going to be clients that leave, so you have to constantly be churning in a certain context. If someone were to get to that point where they wanted.
Yeah, if you're at a product business and I've got, I've got the southeastern U.S. market cornered, and I'm delivering, the best widget to the grocery industry ever seen. Well, somebody's going to be looking at that going, hey, they're making money with that over there. Somebody's going to try and eat your lunch, right?
Right.
So you can't have a static product. You can't be Encyclopedia Britannica. Does anybody buy those anymore? When's the last time somebody bought a Merriam-Webster dictionary? When's the last time somebody bought a paper calendar? The buggy whip business isn't around anymore because nobody's driving buggies. So businesses are going to change around you. If you're making decent money, somebody else is going to notice that, and they're going to want some of that. And thirdly, industries may change, and what you're offering may no longer be required, or may not be required in that manner. So you've got to constantly be tuning. So, and if you've got clients come and go. Clients get bought by somebody. Oh, well, they already have a relationship with our competitor, and so we just got pushed out. Or clients, we've seen a lot of, imagine being in the commercial real estate business these days, or the incredibly hard pressed restaurant business, or if it was in the restaurant supply business, or I've got a lot of friends that are ag up on the north side of San Francisco, and one guy's in olive oil. I was like, well, with the restaurant shutdown, we're not moving near as much olive oil as we used to, right? So things will happen that are beyond your control, but you have to be able to respond to those things. So it's better to anticipate and be proactive than get caught and have to react. I mean, and so another tangent alert, errors of commission are preferred over errors of omission, from the standpoint of do something and have it not quite be right, as opposed to doing nothing, right? If you don't cannibalize your product or service, somebody else is going to. So you might as well do it first.
Right. No, I think that's good. That's good. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. And like I said, I wanted to dive in that because I think some people might have been thinking in their heads, hey, like, wait, why is that the case? And I think it's always important to dive into those details. Awesome. Well, Jeff, this has been an enlightening conversation. I think we could probably talk for much longer, but I want to be respectful of your time and our listeners' time. So I think we'll wrap it up here. If people want to connect with you or check you out or anything of that nature, where can they find you?
www.ciops.com is the website. We're all there. Jeff Richards on LinkedIn. Unfortunately, it is a very common name. The other Jeff Richards in the Silicon Valley is Golden Gate Ventures. And we frequently get each other's stuff. There was a Philadelphia disc jockey by that name, and there was a grade B actor and baseball player by this name. So anyway, Jeff Richards, Palo Alto, easy to find. J Richards at CIOPS.com.
Perfect. Yeah, it's funny. There's a Bob McIntosh who was killed by being beaten to death at a party for trying to break up a party at his neighbor's house, and then they made a Lifetime movie out of it. And so, so it's funny. Like, I've worked very, very hard for a number of years to try to outrank that, but it's like, oh man, like you got to be kidding me, like this.
Yep, I get it.
Perfect. Well, everyone, if you're watching or listening, definitely go check out Jeff. Very, very different guests than I would say normally have on here, but I think bringing in different perspectives and different companies and just completely different things, helps us grow in whatever we're doing. So make sure you go check them out for sure. And as always, make sure you please rate, review, and subscribe to this show, podcast, YouTube channel, wherever you're consuming this content from. What happens is your subscription, rating, and review help the algorithms push it out further, and we can't help more people unless you help us. So appreciate you guys doing that. And as always, if you have questions or you want to check out anything, there'll be links in the show notes. Check those out. But we'll catch you on another episode real soon. Thanks for tuning in.